2 lines on the top. Yes. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Samach Tes on the calendar, so we left off by Samach Tes. Learning today is sponsored by Rabbi Ari and Mrs. Mirlis, right? In honor of a commemoration of the first yard site of his mother, Neshama Shem Aliyah. So we left off at the top of Samach Ches, Amar Aleph, 2 lines on the top. So we're discussing different people that would basically prevent, and it worked both ways. It was like a double-edged sword that basically would prevent a Bas Kohen who marries a Yisrael or has something with a Yisrael, or a Bas Kohen, a Bas Yisrael with a Kohen. So v'hacheresh, I will explain each case. So cheresh, a deaf mute. Now a deaf mute is basically someone who can't acquire something midaraisa. Doesn't have the person does not have proper knowledge, and in order for one to make a kinyan, he needs proper knowledge. So Bas Kohen Israel, if it's a Bas Kohen who is married or with a cheresh to the Yisrael who's a cheresh, he pasala dahakani b'takanas derabanan, because the Rabbanan made a takana that if a cheresh does try and marry a woman, we say that midrabanan he does require her. So since midrabanan the Yisrael acquires this Bas Kohen, she's no longer part of her father's house, and she's a little bit part of this cheresh's Yisrael's house, and therefore she can no longer eat truma. The Bas Yisrael Kohen, and if she's a Bas Yisrael and she goes and she marries a Kohen who's a cheresh, who's a deaf mute, he loimacho. She doesn't eat. Why? Kinin kaspo merachman v'haylav bar kininu, because the Torah says it has to be a kinin kaspo, right? As we saw in this week's parsha, or those in Eretz Yisrael last week's parsha, right? So So since he does not acquire her, he doesn't acquire her to the full extent that she can eat truma, and therefore, since he doesn't completely acquire her, she cannot eat truma as if she is married a regular Kohen. And then we said ben teisha shanim v'chuli. Then we said somebody who's 9 years and a day. Now, the halachic standard of a boy who's 9 years is basically he is somebody who's roy labia, right? He is somebody whose bia is considered to be a child. Somebody under the age of 9 who has relations is not considered to be anything, as opposed to 9 and up. So what's the halach over here? That 9 is paisel ve'eno machil, as our Mishnah stated. So So we had a having to think that we're talking about that it's a woman who's basically waiting for yibum to a child who's basically 9 years and a day. So lamaya, wait. So, but for what standard? Ilamifsal. If we're talking about to passel her, in other words, that this child was 9 is a kohen and she's a bas kohen. So ilamifsal katan nami mifsal pasel. Well, it doesn't have to be roy labia. Even if the child is 5 years old. Right? Since she's waiting for yibum for somebody, she's no longer can go to her father's house because she's awaiting yibum from somebody who's even 5 years old, who's Yisrael. And if she's waiting for yibum from a child who's 9, even if the guy is 20, right, she still doesn't, go back. So it doesn't make a difference either way. It's a yavam. We're talking about a child who's 9 years a day who is ba'al yavimto askinan. The midaraisa kanyalei. So really midaraisa that we said all you need for yibum is bia, and therefore the bia would acquire. Now salkadaisa midaraisa kanyalei. Since midaraisa, this 9-year-old would acquire her ubia so bia. Ema lethal. So maybe if he is a kohen and then maybe he acquires her completely, as if she would go ahead and eat truma. So kamash malan. Therefore, we say no. No, we basically state that the yibum performed by a child who's basically 9 years and a day up until he's bar mitzvah is the same thing as a maimer begadol. It's the same thing as a guy if he was 25 and he says, I'm going to give you maimer, I'm going to give you kedushin, I'm not going to do bia, I'm only going to do the first step, even though it's not required. I do the first step. So such a case, we say he acquires her partially, and part of that partially is that if he's a kohen, he's not meichel her truma. So it turns out in essence that this point of the Mishnah, which states that 9 years and a day, right? Because the Mishnah had a list of ha'uber, va'yavim, va'erisin, va'cheresh, and then it says ben teshiyim echad. It says paislin v'loy machilim. That over there, it was a double-edged sword, as I mentioned, right? Whether she's a bas Kohen to Yisrael or bas Yisrael to a Kohen. So, and it works both ways. It doesn't work. This, however, only works if she's a bas Kohen and he's Yisrael. That's what the statement did. But it doesn't work in reverse. That it doesn't work in reverse. Yeah, good turn on, please. It doesn't work in reverse because it wouldn't work out that way. So Amar le Rava Ihachi Seifa. Wait, I understand it. Seifa Diktani Safik Ben Tesha Shamin of Mechad Safik Sheno Hashta Safik. So we say Safik Sheno. So in it, but wait, the next part of the Mishnah says, well, if the child is a Safik 9 or even less than 9, we don't know. So Hashta Vadai Ben Tesla Machil Safik Miboy. So why do you got to teach me that if the child is only 9, let's say 9.5, so he doesn't allow her to eat truma? So if a child is 8, right, of course he doesn't. So if it's a suffix, if he's 9, of course he can't be Michael or Truma. She can't eat Truma on his account. So what are you telling me that a suffix, right? If a case is a Vadai 9, you don't eat, right? He wouldn't be Michael or Truma. So why you got to teach me that a suffix wouldn't be Michael or Truma? So Elamarava, rather, Nupshat, this is the Pshat the Gemara goes. Elamarava, Bentesha Shamim V'Yoy Mechad, Dihinach Psulim. We're talking about the Psulim, right? Those who are puzzled. Right now, we mentioned earlier that one who is puzzle and he's ba, for instance, a mamzer in a scene that he has relations with a bas kohen, he puzzles her from eating truma in the future. He puzzles her no longer eating truma. So we're talking about if somebody who's a mamzer who's 9 years old, right, or a scene or other kusir or any of these other cases with some list, that person puzzles her. Right? So Ben the passage Biasa. Ukaditani is learned in a brisa. If you have someone who is 9 years old, a boy who's 9 years old, Ger, and if he's a convert, let's say from Ammoni Moavi, which those we know are commanded those two, and Mitzri Adomi, also Mitzri Adomi is his own category, the first couple generations, right? And Kutsi, Nasi, Nechalal, Mamser. Or the child is a 9-year-old, not just one of the types of ger, but rather he could also be a kusi, someone who's a kusi and a sin. Those who had their conversion were suffix, whether it was done out of fear or whether they were not makabel all the mitzvahs, right? Those in the sin of the cases in the years of Yeshua ben Nun, or a chalal, or somebody, let's say he was a chalal, let's say he was a product of, let's say his mother was a divorcee and his father was a kohen, or mamzer, or he's the product of chayvi krisis, right? Let's say a woman was an ashes ish and had a child with another man. Shabo al kohenes leviv Yisraelis. If a child or a 9-year-old who are any of these people, right? This 9-year-old is a mamzer, he's a chalal, or he's a ger moavi, whatever it is. He has relations with a bas kohen, a kohenes, or a levi of Yisraelis. Paslua, he has puzzled her either from eating truma, or obviously our levi Yisraelis can't eat in the future, or bear a kohen. So he puzzles them. So therefore, that's what our Mishnah is teaching us. So when it says a 9-year-old, it's talking about a 9-year-old who is a puzzle. He puzzles this woman. Even 9-year-old, it doesn't have to be a 13-year-old. It doesn't have to be a gadol to puzzle her from truma. It can even be a 9-year-old.
Someone who is royal bia.
9-year-old, right? The Hamiktani Seva, but the Seva and the Mishnah and the Samach test we're going to see later. It says if that fit to enter into the congregation of Israel, a Paislan, then they passel. So we already learned that. Michlal Deresh Lavim Psulas Kinan. So over there, the next Mishnah is talking about Psulim. Sounds like our Mishnah is not talking about Psulim. So how can you say Psulim? So where it says now Reisha Psule Kahal, Seva Psule Kuna. Our Reisha is talking about those are puzzle of Ol Bakal, such as a mamzer, Nasim, those can't marry any Israel. But let's say a chalal, right? Somebody who is, let's say, the product of an almana and a kohen gadol, he's allowed to marry Israel. He's puzzled for Kuna, but he can go ahead and marry Israel. So that's what our Mishnah is talking about Psule Kahal, and the Mishnah later on, as when we see it, we have to keep in mind, it's talking about Psule Kahuna. Fine. Two dots in the middle of Samaches Amad Aleph. So Gufa, now we're going to bring a brisa If he's a convert from Ammoni Moavi or Mitzri Vadoni, those are like two different sets. There's the Ammoni and Moavi, who are basically all the males are always forbidden, the females are mutter, or Mitzri Adomi, right? Those are the first two generations are us, but only 3 anan is okay. Or a Kusi, Nasin, Chalal, Mamzer, Shabol, Akwanis, Leviv, Israelis, Pasla, right? So the apostles, them. Where's the Aleph, right? So we say that it Paslua, right? So the apostles, them. And Rabbi Yossi Aimer, so now we have 2 other shittas, Rabbi Yossi Aimer, and we're going to explain the shittas a little bit later on. Kol Shazara Apostle, if when their union will produce a child who is apostle, then Paisel, then he apostles, then this guy apostles her from Truma. And Kol She'ein Zara Apostle. But if their child will not be apostle, ain't apostle, would not apostle her. Well, we have to see what that means. I'm referring to what the Gemara will explain later on. I'm sure Gamaliel Aimer, Rabbi Shimon says a third shita, right? We have the Tanakama, we have Rabbi Yossi. He says, Kol Shata Noise Bito, if you can go ahead and marry the daughter Ata Noise Almana, so you can go ahead and marry the Almana. Kol Shata Noise Bito. But if you can't marry his daughter, then you cannot go ahead and marry his Almana. In other words, the Almana will become apostle, the woman will become apostle. So we have to see what the difference between Rosh Gamaliel and Rabbi Yossi is. But we'll get to that later. But let's deal with the first part. Minani Mili. So from where we know this, that all these cases, apostles are from Truma. Now we're going to go through several psukim. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Kar the pasuk says, "Ubas Kohen ki sielish zar." So when you have Bas Kohen, when she is to a ish zar, right? And then the rest of the pasuk says, "But Shumas hakadshim lo'isayfel." When she's with a foreign man, a zar, she can no longer eat Shumas kadashim lo'isayfel. Now, Kevan shenivla lipsul pasla. So we learn from this pasuk that since she's nivelas, right, she has relations with someone who's pasul to her, such as any of these psul you mentioned. So therefore, she herself is pasul, right? This is the source of this halacha that we've been talking about since the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, "What do you mean? Havi boile the kamar rachman of bas kohen? That means for the zar." So he says, "What do you mean? This pasuk is teaching us something else. That if a bas kohen marries a Yisrael, right, and so she can no longer eat truma. That's what the pasuk is teaching us. This the standard halacha." So the answer is no. Hahi mivishavel beisavia kinurel milechem avia toichel nafka. That we learn from another pasuk. That we learn from the next pasuk. That pasuk we have is Chav Beis Yud Beis. This is the next pasuk in Vayikra Chav Beis Yud Gimel. It says over there, and she returns to her father's house to eat. Mashma, right? That before she returns to her father's house, i.e., she's living with Yisrael, she's married to Yisrael, she can no longer say, "Hey, I'm going to my parents' house to eat some truma." You're done with that. So the Gemara says, "No, become rachman of a shavel beisavia teichel." So right, and we're heading from that. But the fact it says the Torah says that she returns to her father's house, she can eat. But in the beginning, it sounds like that if she doesn't return to her father's house, i.e., when she's married, she cannot go ahead and eat from her father's house. So Gemara says, "Imi hahi." If it's from there, havamina, I would have thought lava bal michlal asay that it's only in first she can go eat in her father's house. If she gets divorced or widowed, she can go back to her father's house. No children, right? So over there, it only sounds like a chayvi asay, right? In other words, you can go ahead and eat truma, but if I stay married, then it's only a chayvi asay. It's not a lav. So therefore, kasachmana hai lalav. So
if she's married, goes to her father's house, she cannot eat truma.
If she's married to Yisrael, right?
Right.
Right. If she marries to Yisrael, she cannot go to her father's house to eat truma. She's no longer a Bas Kohen living in her father's house. If she gets divorced or widowed, and there's no children, then because then is Rehel, like her youth, then she goes back to her father's house. So the Gemara says, "Lav." When the lav it is v'chol zar lo yechil kadosh nafka. Right? It says over there, any zar should not eat kadosh nafka. So the Gemara answers, "Hahu," top of the page. Hahu miboy de legufe. No, we need that for over there to tell you the halakha itself that any zar cannot eat truma. It's not talking about a woman marrying her. We need that regular just to say that a zar cannot go ahead and eat truma. So the Gemara says, "No trei v'chol zar ksive." There's 2 v'chol zars that are written. right? V'chol zar lo yochel is written twice, two psukim, and therefore one is to teach the regular zar can't eat. The other one is to teach if she goes ahead and marries a zar.
What are the two psukim?
Yeah. Or is a Gabi Bas Kohen see V'shava Beisavia Malach Avia Toicha V'chol zar lo yochel. Right. We have enough. Right. Yeah, I think you'd basically give them all over there in this week's parsha. Right. So the Gemara says Vakat mi boile. Wait, don't we still need to run this for somebody else? Look at Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Don't Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. V'chol zar. It says v'chol zar. So zaras amati l'cha v'lo aninas. We learn over there that only zaras prevents from eating, but it doesn't go ahead and prevent the matir aninus. If one is an onain, right, they can still go ahead and eat truma. So the Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina means zar b'chol zar nafka, right? Because it says v'chol, the extra vav is extra. So therefore, we darshan that v'chol zar comes to teach us the extra drasha. So v'kati b'borle k'zetanya shehi chazeres the truma ve'no chazeres the chazav v'shoy. No, we need for something else. Another halacha. When she returns to her father's house, and she's done her first previous marriage is dissolved, is over. She goes back and she eats in her father's house. She can only eat the truma. She can't eat all other matmas kuna, such as the some of the parts for karbanos, right? The chazav v'shoy. The Amar Rav Chiz, Amar Ravina, Rav Shila, my crowd's positive. See the passage says, "Vas koin ki CL zar he could shumas hakachim loisaychel. The shumas hakachim loisaychel b'mara mina kadashim." Right? You don't.
Which parts are we talking about?
The chazav v'shog that's given to the kohana.
Those are the matnas and the kahuna.
Yeah. Those are given to the kohen. So that her father always receives those portions. When she goes back to her father's house, she can no longer eat those portions. Because she was once married to Yisrael and she got divorced or whatever with no kids. But she can eat the truma in his house. So certain things of a kohen she can eat, certain things she can't, because the pasuk says the truma hakachim, right? So you can eat that you can eat, but you can't eut that which is marim in a kadashim, that which is selected, that which is separated from the kadashim, i.e. the chazav v'shog, she cannot go ahead and eat. In came.
Why she's limited if she
because the pasuk says, right? It says the bas kohen kisel yizar he b'trumas hakachim lo'isaychel. So forever, once she's with yizar, then she can no longer eat that which was torem min hakachim, that which was separated from the kachim. She can no longer eat, even if she gets divorced. Correct. So the kachim, that pasuk says you cannot. She can't. Once she's with the yizar, she can't eat the kachim.
No.
Right. But there's another pasuk that says she can go back to her father's house and eat. So what can she when she can't eat?
I asked about manas kahuna. That's different from kachim. Manas kahuna. Every animal that we shot.
You give a chazav v'shog. That's our time. There's 24.
But that's not kachim.
Right.
That's
So
just a
he's
manas.
Chazav, yeah.
So
Okay.
Kachim is out of their territory, but all the rest is included.
Are you talking about kachim? Or are you talking about manas kahuna?
No, from the kachim they separate the chazav v'shog.
Okay.
From the
From
kachim they
kachim.
separate. Right. From the
Even-
kachim. So
Even
those
the
items.
Kohen can't take it out of the Beis Hamikdash. So what are we talking about?
They can take it. What do I mean? From shlamim? What do you mean? From a shlamim, they can eat in Yerushalayim, right?
Can they?
Yeah, because
Oh,
kachim
okay.
kalam versus kachim, not from a chatas, but from the kachim kalam, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
in came lichtav kra he bekachim lo'isaychel. If
But
that's
he
the
can't even give it to his wife then.
He can't.
why? What do you mean?
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Now it says she
Kachim?
can't do it. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So the Gemara says, so in case lichtav kra he bekachim. So no, this is not the only learning of this pasuk because it says if so. He bekachim lo'isaychel. Could you just said bekachim lo'isaychel? My betrumas hakachim shma min atarti. So indeed, we can learn both halachas. So far, we've learned all the halachas. Now, Ashkan Kohenes. So this is only referring to the Kohenes. But we also described that the Levi of Yisrael is also become puzzle. It's not just a halacha by Kohenes. We say Levi Yisrael also become puzzle. No, when she becomes puzzle, right? One is she would never be able to be truma in the future if she marries a Kohen, and two, she can't marry a Kohen, right? So Ashkan Kohenes, Levi Yisrael, min Allah. And so where do you know that from? So the Gemara answers Kida Amar Rabbi Abba Bara says bas ubas. So Hanami bas ubas. So we have another drasha later on, which the Gemara there explains the extra vav, ubas kohen, right, with extra vav. So therefore, we can include also others. So over here it says ubas, not only a kohenes, but even a Levi of Yisraelis. So it says, come on. So okay, who is this like? Rabbi Akiva, the darshan vav. It must be only like the opinion of Rabbi Akiva who darshans vavin, because the ubas, the extra vav. Says no, I feel it in Rabbanan. Kule ubas krayiseru. Right, the word ubas kohen. Right, since it was the previous pasuk was talking about a bas kohen, it didn't need to repeat the words ubas kohen. Why did it say it again? So the whole thing is ladrash. It's not just darshing the vav; it's the extra words, and therefore it's not just daf according to Rabbi Kiva. Rather, it can be even according to the Rabban. Fine. So Ashka on the Truma. So now till now we've been discussing passing her from Truma. The kahuna minoan. So where do we know that she's passing the kahuna? So Atu Levi Yisraelis. So Gemara says, so Atu Levi Yisraelis lo lekuna binalei. Right. So what we included Levi Yisraelis. Is that not for marrying a kohen, marrying to the kuna? Dila truma. Banais Michal Trumaninu. Well, can a regular Levi of Israelis eat truma? They can't, right? So what halakha are we teaching it when it comes to a Bas Levi or a Bas Yisrael? Obviously, we're telling you that they're compulsed not to eat truma. They couldn't eat truma before. We're telling to tell you that they're puzzle mikahuna. So Gemara says, wait, alam alo. Well, maybe like this. Maybe if she was a Levi of Israelis, so maybe she was eating, let's say she was already temporarily married, or she was married, right, to a Kohen, and she's niveles with someone who's apostle, and and let's say even the husband dies, right, or let's say the husband dies and she was niveles with somebody else, right? So till now she was eating truma on behalf of her son, right? So maybe in that case, maybe that's a scenario. She was eating truma already because she was a widowed woman with descendants from a Kohen, and maybe she's eating then, and then we're teaching you that no, she's possibly truma. So Gemara says b'shvil b'na. So wait, she's her son Kal v'chaimer. Ma kohenes the kedusha nafsha achla pasala. So maybe learn from a Kal v'chaimer. So by when she's eating on behalf of her son, ma kohenes the kedusha nafsha achla in a regular kohenes, who because of her own kedusha she's let's say a bas kohen, so with her own kedusha she's eating it. So pasala. So if she's nivelas is one of these people who are pasal, so she becomes pasal. So Levi Yisrael is the lo achlu el b'shvil b'na lo koshke. Isn't it obvious that Levi Yisrael who aren't even eating truma on their own behalf, certainly they should become pasal by being nivelas with one of these psulim. So where it says no, no, actually it's pumfakert. Kohanes the kaddish gufa pasala. In the case of the Kohanes, if she was niveles with somebody else, right, with a apostle, the reason why she becomes apostle is because she was the one who had the kedusha. She lost the kedusha. But however, kaddish gufa le pasala. But maybe you could argue that a Levi Yisraelis, she didn't have the kedusha. Her child had the kedusha. So therefore, if she ruined her own kedusha by being niveles, right, with an apostle, right, maybe she can continue eating because her whole source of eating truma was not from her and her kedusha, was from her son's kedusha. So what does it make a difference what she does? Maybe she can continue eating her truma. So therefore, you can't learn from a Kal v'chaimer. So Ella, so we say no, Ella l'kahuna Kal v'chaimer megrusha. Rather, let's say for that she's pas l'kahuna of Kal v'chaimer grusha. Ma grusha shemuteres b'truma asur l'kahuna. So a grusha, regular divorced woman, she's no longer allowed to go ahead and marry a Kohen, right? But she's moteri truma. So zu shasur b'truma. So this, right, who a Levi in Israelis, who's aser b'truma, ain't did she needs to the It's obvious that she should become pasal l'kahuna. So Gemara says, okay, that's all fine, but however, you have a technicality. Can you go ahead and create an isser from logic, right, from din? So the Gemara answers, no, we're not learning it as the Kal v'chaimer. Rather, this din is teaching you what is coming to teach us what the pasuk is talking about, right? That which the pasuk passes her, it's a gilui, it's coming to teach you that it even passes her the kahuna. Right, and therefore we see that a Levi Yisraelis is puzzle lekahuna if they're nivelas with one of these people who are asur lekal. The Ema, so the Gemara says now, okay, so we said that she is nifsa with apostle, she becomes they become asur lekal. But now the Gemara suggests maybe we're only talking, or we're not talking about somebody, right? Who, let's say, a Nasin or a Mams or something, like that, or a Nasin or in the Chayvi Lavin or a Chalal, right? Maybe we're talking about someone who is from some Chayvi Krisis, right? Maybe it's only fit if there was a Karis with her, right? Not a regular Isser, right? There's a regular, we're talking about regular Isurim. It's to marry a Mams or to marry one of the others. Not Isser Kares, right? Not if it was, her father's brother, right? Maybe only then she becomes puzzle. So the Gemara answers no. The pasuk says, "Ki siya amar Rachmana hinach nisbo havya chavikris of labne havya." So it says no. The pasuk says that when she's with ki siya, knows when she's married to. So we have to be talking about somebody who their kedushin would be chal, right? If she tries to go ahead and marries a karov, right? She tries to go ahead and marry somebody who would be an isser kares to her. That the kedushin would be chal. Therefore, that we're not teaching. If that's the case, if that's the case, right now, this is actually up for machlokas in terms of whether there is whether kedushin or whether it is isser kares, right, for marrying an avik chavim, right, or an eved, right. So according to this, right, because according to this, we're going with the sheet that holds that the kedushin is not chal at all, but avik chavim eved lo lifsul. So hinach. So my answer is no. Hinach pasuk midrash Shmuel. No, if she goes ahead and she does become pasuk lekuna if she marries an avik chavim or an eved, right? But that is learned from somewhere else. That is learned maybe the Shmuel. Dam Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shmuel. Minayin lo avik chavim eved shabal bas Yisrael be'al kohenes levivi. So shapaslua that if an eved or avik chavim is bal on a bas Yisrael or on a kohenes, a levia, all right. That they become apostle, right? Just did a different order, right? Bas Yisrael, Kohenes Levia, right? Usually it's Kohenes Levia, right? Shapaso that the apostles them. Shnamar the pasuk says, "Ubas Kohen Kisiya Almanu Grusha." When a Bas Kohen, right? The entire pasuk over there is the Veka. This is the pasuk Chabez Gimel. It says there, "Bas Kohen Kisiya Almanu Grusha V'Zera Ein Law." Right? She just becomes a widowed or divorced, and she has no children. V'Shavel Beisavia, and then she returns to her father's house, doing a right, like in her youth. That's the pasuk, right? So you say, so who do you learn from here? Turn the page. Mi sheyesh lo, right? So mi sheyesh lo almanas begerushin, but only talking about somebody that she become widowed from or divorced from. But you go ahead, you marry a tree, right? You can't become widowed or divorced from a tree. You married Avik Chavim. There is no kedushin there, so you're not widowed or divorced from him. So therefore, this pasuk is not talking about a woman who married a Avik Chavim to return to her father's house because she can't become widowed or divorced from someone that she didn't have an initial marriage to. So yes, Avik Chavim almanas v'gerusha. So Ashkan Kohenes. So we find a Kohenes because that's pasuk is talking about a Kohenes, right? It says Ubas Kohen, right? So Raya says no. We said earlier, Kedama Rabbi Abba Amarav Bas Ubas. Like we say later on, right? We darsh in the extra vav, right? It says Ubas Kohen, and it could have just said Bas Kohen. Why did it say Ubas? So Hachanami. So therefore, the extra vav comes to teach also Levi Yisrael. Hachanami Bas Ubas. So Gemara says, come on, like we said last time. Rabbi Akiva, the Darish vav, who darshans all the vav, and every vav in the Torah includes something else. So even say the Rabbanan, Kule Ubas Krayiseru. The entire word Ubas is actually extra. Be'ema mish yeshla almanas vegerushin ba kilesle zara kafa. Maybe it's like this: somebody who you're able to go ahead and be widowed or divorced from, i.e., someone you could have been married to, right? Not Chavik Krisis. Right. Only when does she return to her father's house? Ki lesle zare kafla. When there is no descendant from him, then she goes back to her father's house. Ki zare, but if she does have a child, then she can't go ahead and go back to her father's house because she has a child from Yisrael. However, maybe someone who she cannot become widowed or divorced from, i.e., let's say an Avik Chavim, maybe, but afagad, he says, right? Maybe it means that even if she has a child, she always returns to his house, right? In other words, the big chiddush here, right? In other words, you're saying that If it's somebody get widowed, divorced, when the pasuk says if you have a child, if you don't have a child, you can turn to his father's house. It's only talking about people you could have married to. If you weren't married to him, even if you have 10 children, you can still go back to your father's house and eat truma. So Gemara says, "In gain, Rigu Levi Yisrael Islamally." Right. So if that's right, it was nothing. It was like she had children, but like it was nothing. So Gemara says, if that's the case, right? So then, what would be the point of teaching us Levi Yisraelis Lamali? Right? There is no point for them to return to her father's house because they don't return to their father's house. According to Rabbi Kiva, who learns that there is no kedushin by Chavi Lavin. So what does he learn from Kisei Elizar? Why is he teaching something else? We learned over there, it was talking about Chavi Krisis, but over here, right, Kisei Elizar, why do you need it? So so it says over there, why do you need that? So Kiti Boil, Almana Grusha Lamali. So it says over there, if she was with somebody else, so why do you need Almana Grusha? Right, because there's never chal.
In other words, but going with Zona can always eat.
So if she was, according to him, right, according to
you understand that if Zona is still can eat.
so not Zona, but if she was married, right, if she wasn't, if she was married to somebody else, that marriage was nothing, and therefore she should be able to go back to her father's house, right? In other words, why do you need the extra pasuk, right, of teaching you? One in the case of where the kedushin is chal. The other one is the case is not kedushin chal. According to Rabbi Kiva, the kedushin is never chal. You only need one pasuk.
But if it doesn't have, it's not.
Right, but or if she was with somebody else, whether it was a marriage or not, she can't go back because that's what we said earlier by Ovid Chavim. Even though it's not a marriage, we're not saying it must be a marriage because you're going back to your father's house. We're saying no, even if it wasn't a marriage, you don't go back to your father's house because you're with Ovid Chavim or whatever, right? So maybe over here you don't go back, but why do you need 2 psukim? So Lamali. So the answer is Almana lahachmir Allah ugrusha lahaki Allah. What do you mean? So it says Almana is really to be machmir and a grusha to be maker. What's going on here? Utsricha diash meaning Almana. If it just said Almana who the chiles leizara achla. Only a widow the chiles leizara, then she goes and eats. Mishum why the chazi lekahuna? Because an Almana is still fit. A woman who's widowed is still fit to marry a Kohen. She can't marry a Kohen Gadol. Right? Because she's kasher lekahal, she can marry a Kohen. So therefore it says Almana. But a divorcee, a woman who got divorced from her Yisrael husband, I would say, maybe I would say that she can't even return to her father's house at all. Because she's not kasher lekuna. So therefore it teaches us that even if she's a grusha, even though she's no longer fit to marry a Kohen, she can still go back to her father's house and eat truma. V'yashmin and grusha. And if it just saw grusha, if it just saw a woman who's divorced, she goes back grusha duchi isla zarla achla. Only a woman who's divorced. If she's divorced and she has children, then she can't go back to her father's house. But maybe a woman who is widowed, since she's fit for the kahuna, maybe I'd say a woman who's widowed, right? Even if she had children, she can still go back to her father's house because she's sit right the kahuna. So tzricha, therefore we need that case. And therefore it teaches that both, it comes to teach you that both an Almana and Grusha have the same halacha. It doesn't make a difference their status of marrying a Kohen in the future. Right. Rather, that both of them, as long as they don't have children, go back to their father's house and eat truma. So the Ema, so the Gemara suggests another point. The Ema niva lipsul la af machzir gushasa. Maybe we say, we learned earlier that she's nivelas with a psul, right? Someone who's puzzle, she can no longer eat truma. So let's say that even includes a machzir gushasa. Now, a woman, she gets divorced from a man, or a guy divorces his wife. She marries somebody else, and she gets divorced from the second guy. She can no longer marry her original husband, right? She's allowed to remarry the same guy as long as she doesn't marry someone in between. If she marries someone in between, that's called machzir gushasa. Let's say that if the woman is that he takes her back machzir gushasa, he passes her from truma. So Gemara says no. The ish zara machmana misha zar esla meikar. No, it has to be an ish zar, someone who's a foreigner, someone who's always been foreign. Misha zar esla meikar from the beginning. That fuki hai zar esla meikar. That he wasn't forbidden to her in the beginning. She only became forbidden to him after she remarried or after she married somebody else in between. So Ihachi, if that's the case, Chalal, Dalav Zaru, but a Chalal is not a Zar, right? A Chalal is somebody, right, who is the product, let's say, of a Kohen and a Grusha. So he's not fit to work in the base of Mikdash, but he's not a apostle, he's not a Ish Zar, right? So Ihachi Chalal Zaru, Mekar lo leave, Mekar lo leave so, right?
This is Zar.
No, but he's not a Zar in terms of the Kahal, right? The Chalal mutter afilu b'kohenes. He's allowed to marry Kohenes.
Right.
He's not an Ish Zar, so he's mutter to marry her.
Yeah.
So maybe a Chalal shouldn't passel, right? Lo leave so. So Amarkal lo yichalol zaro be'ama. So the pasuk says lo yichalol. One should not profane his children be'ama. So maki zaro lo mahu pasel. Just like he is pasel. Av zaro nami pasel. So too his offspring are av zaro nami pasel. So too so just like he passes her, so too his children so too they would passel her, and therefore since he's with her and they would have children, therefore that passes her from truma. So maybe it only comes to the time of the marriage, not just by being nivelis. So Gemara says no, do it to Kohen Gadol be'almana, similar to Kohen Gadol be'almana. Ma Kohen Gadol be'almana be'bia, just like a Kohen Gadol when he marries an almana. Right now, she's not possible yet. However, only so my Kohen Gadol be'almana be'bia is only by the bia, but not marriage. So afainami be'bia. Be'ema adi ka'avya bia. Do me the Kohen Gadol almana. Maybe it's both because he has to marry an relation. So no, my Kohen Gadol be'almana be'bia l'chudei. Over there, it's only bia l'chudei. Afainami be'bia l'chudei. Fine. Period. As I mentioned earlier, we had this brisa, right? We brought the brisa by the two dots on Samach Chesed Aleph. And I said there was a Tanakama, right, who brought the list of the Ben Tes Yom Echad, of all the Ger, Amoni, Moavi, Mitzvah, so on and so forth. And then we had two other opinions. We said that the Tanakama says passes them. Rabbi Yossi says no, only Kol Shazara Paisel, then he passes. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no, if you can marry the daughter, you can marry the Amana, it doesn't pass. So now, Rabbi Yossi, Omer, so there's a quote from that brisa. Rabbi Yossi, Omer, Kol Shazara Paisel. Anything if their children repassel, then he passes her. So ma'iga bein Tanakh and Rabbi Yossi. So what's the difference between Tanakh and Rabbi Yossi? So Rabbi Yochanan, Mitzri Sheni V'Adomi Sheni Ika Benayu. A ger Mitzri or a ger Adomi. Now we mentioned earlier that the prohibition of marrying a Mitzri and Adomi, right, is the two generations, right? The two generations. The third is mutter. Now, so if you marry a Mitzri Sheni, so you're not pasteling the children because the children are third generation. So according to Rabbi Yossi, if the Zaro is not going to be pastel, she's not going to be pastel. So therefore, in this case, if it was a Mitzri Sheni or a Domi Sheni, right? So therefore, then she would not be pastel the Truma because her children are pastel. And both of them learn from the Kohen Gadol by an Almana, right? One says across the board, and the other one says no, only if the Kohen Gadol and the child will become a Chalal. Tanakama Savarma Kohen Gadol be'almana should be also be'avera paisel hainami paisel. So it says so according to Tanakama, since the almana of the Kohen Gadol, since the bia, right, should be also be'avera paisel, and he passes her. So too, she was apostle. So therefore, all the cases are apostle. Rabbi Yossi Savar, no, but Kohen Gadol, ma Kohen Gadol shizaro apostle paisel. Just like in the case of the Kohen Gadol, since the children are apostle, they be chalalim. Therefore, she's apostle. Avkol shazaro pasul. So to any other case where the children will be pasul, she is pasul. Lafukim Mr. Sheni, the ain't zara pasul. To exclude Mr. Sheni that there's there is not pasul. The pasul says, "Banim asher yolodu lahem dor shlishi yavol lahem b'kal Hashem." It says over there, the children are born to the third generation can enter into the congregation. Fine. That was shita number 2 in the brisa. And the two dots, and I'm sure Kol Shatan Naise, Bito Atan Naise. Also, if you can go ahead and marry the daughter, then he can marry the almana, and i.e., then she's not pasul lakuna. So ma'ika ben Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Samar Ula, ger amoni u'moavi ika benayu. The difference is between ger amoni and moavi. U'shneim lo lamdu elam kohen gadol. The almana, and both of them once again I learned from Kohen Gadol almana. How so? Rabbi Yossi Savar Ma Kohen Gadol Be'almana Shezar Apostle. Rabbi Yossi learns that by Kohen Gadol Be'almana Zar Apostle that the children are apostle Chalal Upostle, right? And it's apostles. Kol Shezar Apostle. So do we learn that any time that the children are apostle, then she is apostle. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Savar Ma Kohen Gadol Be'almana Shekol Zara by Kohen Gadol with Almana Shekol Zara Apostle. Kol Shezar Apostle. Only if all the children are apostle. And therefore she's possible. To exclude Amoni Moavi, the ain calls our apostle because all the children of if one marries an Ammoni or a Moavi are not apostle. Why? Ammoni v'lo Moanis, Moavi v'lo Moavis. Because we learned with the pasuk, Ammoni male, only the male children are apostle, but not the female. So therefore, since his daughter, right? Rav Shimon says, since you can marry his bito, you can marry Ammonaso. So it's over here, since the daughters would be okay because female Moavi or Ammoni are okay. So therefore, it will not passel the woman from Truma or Kuna. Fine. That was that. Now you Mishnah. 2 lines from the bottom. Ha'oines v'amafata v'ashaita le'paislin v'lo machila. So we had earlier, we had cases where people were, it was a double-edged sword, where it worked both ways, that it would aser from Truma. This actually works the opposite. If a woman was violated or seduced, right, she was not married, right, let's say by Yisrael, right, so it does not pass if she was a Bas Kohen. It will not pass her from eating Truma in her father's house. And also, right, we'll soon see that they but they wouldn't be able to feed her. And if they're not fit to enter Yisrael, now remember earlier we had a kasha before. What are you talking? If the Teisha of the Yom Echad, the 9-year-old boy was talking about psulim, the next Mishnah talking about psulim. Must be talking about children. So we said no, that was referring to psulim lekahal, and this was over here was referring to the kuna, right? So what's the case? Going back earlier, so Yisrael Shabal Bas Kohen. Yisrael, he was Baal Bas Kohen, right? So in such a case, so let's say was not he violated her or he seduced her. Shabal Bas Kohen Teichel b'Truma. Then she can go ahead and still eat Truma. However, turn the page. Ibra, right? If she was pregnant, loy Teichel b'Truma. Then she cannot go ahead and eat Truma. Nachtach ha'uber b'meya. If the child died, right, was cut up or whatever, the child died an abortion, right? There's an abortion, very important abortion Gemara today, right? If the child died even while it was still in her, when it didn't come out, Teichel, she can go back to eating because since she doesn't, when she's pregnant, right, she's going to have a child. So where's she going to have a child? And therefore it's from the Yisrael, and therefore she can no longer eat in her father's house. But once she loses the baby, right, and if the baby was not born, the baby died, then she can go back to eating in her father's house. Haya Kohen Shabal Bas Yisrael. Now let's say the opposite case. It was a Kohen Shabal Bas Yisrael. She cannot go ahead and eat Truma, right? So just because he was Baaleha, she cannot eat Truma because just, if she was Mazana with somebody, he was violated or whatever it is, she doesn't make her now eating Truma like she's married to a Kohen. Ibra, if she becomes pregnant from the Kohen, once again, she can't go ahead and eat because just because you have a fetus, right, it doesn't allow you to feed, right, from the Kohen because you don't have a child yet. He has to be born. Yalda, but if the child was born, then Teichel. Then she can go ahead and eat Truma on behalf of her child, right, because it's from a Kohen. Nimsa.
We're talking about a woman who's married to a Kohen.
No, she doesn't have married. We're not talking about married. He doesn't have to be married, right? Now, Nimsa turns out Koichel shel ben gadol mishalav. It turns out that ironically, right, the strength of the baby is stronger than the strength of the husband because if she was just Mazana with a Kohen, she doesn't need Truma, right? But if she has a baby is born, she can now eat Truma. So it turns out the baby is stronger than the father because the baby can allow her to eat Truma and the father cannot. Cute, fine. Yeah. Cute, just don't, I don't think her father would find it very cute. Fine, now, ha'eved paisel mishum bia, ve'ein paisel mishum zera. Now, next case. An Evet, right? An Evet, he apostles because of Bia, right? So if she was eating, or explain this case. Now, if she was eating truma before, so you would pass her from paisa mishum Bia, then a paisa mishum zera, but not from having a child. What do you mean? Ketzat. So Bas Yisrael lekohen. If you have a case of a Bas Yisrael, and she was lekohen, she was married to a kohen, right? So she's married to or Bas Kohen Yisrael, or Bas Kohen Yisrael. The Yelda Imena Ben, and she had a child. The Halach haben, the Nichbash, the Nichbash al HaShifcha. So
now
there is a woman. So right, we're not going to be talking about her. We're going to talk about the children for them. Now, Bas Kohen was married to Yisrael, or Yisrael married to a Bas Kohen, and she had a son, right? Son. And this son went and violated the Eved, or the Shifcha. The Yelda Ben. So now she has a grandson from the Shifcha and her son. Now, Harei Zeh Eved, right? This is an Evet, right? The Evet, because it goes after the mother. The mother was a Shifcha, right? So therefore, the child is an Evet.
Shivcha Kananis.
Right. Now, Haisa Aim Aviv Bas Yisrael Kohen. Now, if it was a scenario of Haisa Aim Aviv Bas Yisrael Kohen, so if the grandmother was talking about a case of she was a Yisrael and he's a Kohen, then she cannot eat from. Not, in this case, right? If it was a Bas Yisrael to a Kohen, right? Then she cannot eat on behalf of the child, of the grandchild, because say any descendants, because the grandchild is not considered to be from her family; it's considered to be from the Evet.
The assumption is like the husband and her son. They both
died,
died.
right? Yeah. So they both die here, right? But however, Bas Kohen Yisrael, if she was a Bas Kohen Yisrael, Techel Truma, and her husband dies, and she's I'm a Bas Kohen. Go says, what do you mean? You have a grandchild? No. Since the grandchild is an Evet, so therefore she can go back to her father's house. Fine. Mamzer Paisel Umaychel. A mamzer, if you have a descendant who is a mamzer, then he would passel from eating truma. He would passel the grandma from eating truma, umaychel, and could also feed her on her behalf. How so? Ketzad. So Bas Yisrael, the Kohen, or Bas Kohen Yisrael. So if you have, right, the mother was soon to be the grandmother, she was either a Bas Kohen or Kohen, or Bas Kohen Yisrael. The Yaldi met a Ben, and she has a child. Now the Halakha Bas. Excuse me, did I say Ben? The Yalda met a Bas, right? She has a daughter. Now the daughter goes up, she goes ahead and she marries, has a child with an Eved Rav Chavim. Right, Venice the Yalda men a Ben. According to the Shita, this holds that an Eved or Rav Chavim would produce a mamzer. So he goes off. Now the grandchild. You have a woman standard. Either she's a Bas Kohen, she's married to Yisrael, or Yisrael and married to a Bas Yisrael and married to a Kohen. All right. She has a daughter, or they have a daughter. Okay. This daughter goes ahead and marries a guy. The grandchild is a mamzer. According to this shita, this Mishnah holds like the shita. The Avichamin creates a mamzer. Okay. Now the grandchild is a mamzer. Now her husband dies, right? Everyone else dies. Now, she's raising her grandchild who's a mamzer. Now, what's the case here? The other man raised a mamzer. So in this case, raised a mamzer. Haisa ein imo Bas Yisrael. If she was originally a Bas Yisrael and her husband's a Kohen and he since died, so teicha b'truma. She can go ahead and eat truma. What do you mean? Because since there's offspring from her husband who's a Kohen, she can continue. The offspring's a mamzer. Doesn't make a difference. The mamzer is part of her family, or part of the family tree. No. When it comes to eating Kohen on behalf of children, it's not just children, but any descendants. Since there's descendants, even the descendants of mamzer, she can go ahead and eat truma.
More so than an Eved.
Right. Eved is considered to be part of the Eved family, right?
Yes.
But over here, the mom's is part of her own family. So if how does I say my best to the Kohen Shuma? Now Baskolni, if she's a Baskolni Israel, she would say, "Oh, look, I have no descent. I guess grandson is a mom's. I should certainly go back to my father's house." No, can't go ahead and eat truma. Fine. Next case, Kohen Gadol Pamim Shu Paisil. Kohen Gadol. There are times, right, where even a Kohen Gadol would pass. We just said a mamzer can allow his grandmother to eat truma. Now we're going to see a Kohen Gadol, or someone who's fit to be Kohen Gadol, right? He would not allow his, them to go ahead and eat his grandmother to eat truma. So so case, what's the case? Bas Kohen Yisrael. So you have a Bas Kohen to Yisrael. The Yodai men a Bas. So a Bas Kohen, she's daughter because she marries Yisrael, and they have a daughter. Mazel tov. The Halcha Habas Venisis LaKohen, and she goes ahead and she marries a Kohen. The Yalda Himena Ben. She marries a Kohen as a child. Hareze Roylius Kohen Gadol. This child can become Kohen Gadol.
But there's nothing.
Oh, may the Mishame Shagav Mizbech. Even if he goes ahead and he becomes Kohen Gadol, he can work on the Mizbech. Michael as Imo. So in such a case, so he's Michael as Imo. He can have his mother. Right? Who, because the mother she was a Bas Kohen to Yisrael, so therefore, right? So therefore, she's right. So therefore, she can allow he can allow his mother's machlas imo because his mother is she married a Kohen, right?
Right.
She's a Kohen. She was Yisrael, but she married a Kohen, so therefore he allows her as imo. But he would passel the grandmother because the grandmother, right? She was a Bas Kohen. She has descendants from her husband who was the Yisrael. Zosamaris, like Bnei Kohen Gadol, she pasani mi'etrum. Right? So it's like people say, Kiyua say, my grandson shouldn't be a Kohen Gadol because he's going to passel me from Truma, from eating Truma. So in this case, that even though yes, she's very proud, she brings out her photo album of the doctor, her grandson's a Kohen Gadol. Nevertheless, he sort of ruins it for her. She cannot go ahead and eat Truma from her father's house. Fine. Zak the Gemara. So Tanina, so we learned a couple more minutes. So Tanina, lahad tanrabanan, shaita v'kadan shenasu nashim umesu. L'shaseyam p'turas min chalitza min ayib. So what do we start off with? Right, we talked in the beginning about oinus mafat. So we said over here that that a feshota or a katan, they married women and they died, so their marriage is nothing, right? It's nothing to do. It's not considered to be chal at all. Oh, because we're talking about shota, right? That's what he says. Because Mishnah started with shota, so we're saying a shota does not acquire her at all. So Kate said, we said over there, Hari so shabal bas kohen tochal b'truma. So he said, if he Yisrael is bal bas kohen, and he can go ahead and eat truma. But if she was pregnant, she was a bas kohen, then we say, you have to stop eating with your truma now because you're pregnant. We got to see what happens if you have a child or not. Now, so Keva Dibila Teichel. So since she was pregnant, she can't eat. But in a normal case, right, where she just was mazana with him, right, she can go eat truma. Right? She's not pregnant. Right? Let's be concerned that perhaps she's pregnant. So Milotan, do we not learn? We have other cases where a woman who's with another man, she's married to somebody else, she gets divorced, she got to wait 3 months. So to over here, why did we say she can immediately go back to her father's house and eat truma? Shouldn't we be concerned that she's pregnant?
And wait 3 months.
And wait 3 months, right? So Amar Rabbi Ravuna liyuchsin chashesh l'truma lo'chashesh. When it comes to Yuchsin, to remarry, we want 3 months. So for Yichus, then we're concerned about pregnancy. But when it comes to Truma, we're not concerned. We're not chayshesh. When it comes to matters of Truma, we're not chayshesh for pregnancy.
We said when the fit is in, it doesn't matter. Remember we said,
if
the fit is not out yet, it doesn't matter. So
right.
That's another angle. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right, but no, but we said if she's pregnant, she has to take a moment, she has to stop, because now she could give birth, so she has to stop. But the other way around, you're right? If he was a Kohen and she's pregnant, we'll say that's not good enough yet. He has to be born. Now, the Gemara asks, I've truma lechashuva. We're going to write Gite shachas kaida libisasi. You guy gives a woman to get the hands of her, and he says, okay, this would be chal a minute before I die. Asur lechol b'truma yad. and she's a Kohen, if he lives for the next 20 years, she's always forbidden to eat Truma. Why? Because the next minute he could die. So Truma, so we are Chayshish for things. So when it comes to marriage, right? Then we're Chayshish. Znus, we're not Chayshish. In other words, because normally when there's Znus, they do whatever types of things they are. They take Plan B or whatever they do afterwards because they don't want to become pregnant. When they're married, right? So then you don't mind. If they're not married, they can go ahead and jump down the stairs. Fall down the stairs, do something to prevent pregnancy. But by marriage, they want to become pregnant. When it's soon michashu, and by the soon michashu, by Thailand, by Bas Kohen, Shanisis Yisrael. You have a Bas Kohen, right? Who went ahead and married Yisrael. Umes, and he dies. Tavelas vechelas b'shuma l'erev. She can go ahead and eat that night, right? B'shuma l'erev. So she can go ahead and eat at night. So we see over there that even then, right? So she can eat truma, and that was marriage, right?
But I think it's the day they got married.
Why?
So our opinions, they do talk about maybe it was the first time. The first time was so chashash, but over here, even that.
No, they were married for a year, so then
multiple times. You say that she was pregnant from the last 3 months.
Yeah,
right. So Rav Chizda tavels v'chelas ad arba'im. No, first 40 days, because we hold the first 40 days of a fetus, it's only mai ba'alma. It's only water. It's not considered to be a fetus yet. So therefore, when she can eat it right away, it's because it's within the first 40 days. Eat up until the 40 days. Because why? Because if she's not pregnant, so she's not pregnant, she can go ahead to her father's house. She is pregnant. And only up to 40 days, you can still eat because only considering water, it's not considered to be a fetus. So if that's the case, a seifa. There's 2 more lines, right? What about the seifa? So it says, they recognize that she's pregnant, right? Then we say then she's mikukelis, right? Another then it's bad, but according to you, right? We said it's okay. So samai mikukelis no, is bad only up until the 40 days. Now, it was the first 40 days, even if she was pregnant, turns out she gave birth later on, the first 40 days were still okay. It was only from after the 40 days up until, they recognized her being pregnant. That would be the problem of her eating truma. We'll stop here because we got a race to put our slow down. So, everybody, have a wonderful day. Travis Hashem.